Great. We're here live on another Facebook and YouTube chat with Kobo Writing Live. And I'm really happy to welcome Ines Johnson today.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us and having a chat. Going to go through, so we can take questions as they come, as they're being posted, and we'll kind of go throughout the flow. And if we don't get to them through the chat, we'll get to them at the end. So Ines, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really liked your talk. We were just talking about conferences there about Brian Cohen's self-publishing live event that was earlier in the summer. And I thought you had just all sorts of terrific advice to share and super valuable to writers.
It was based on a lot of my past mistakes.
Just like learning mistakes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. But for anyone that's not too familiar with your work, would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Ines. As I say, I write kissing books. I have 3 pen names, and they're all romance. They're different levels of steam. So with Ines Johnson, I write urban fantasy romance and paranormal romance. With Ines Johnson, that's my sweet romance pen name. And then my given name is Nikisha Shanae, which nobody can spell. So my initials are NS. So my very first pen name was NS Johnson. It's really, really, really steamy stuff.
Nice. I really like that you describe it as kissing books. I think it kind of hits the nail on the head.
They are. There's kissing in all of them.
Yeah. So you kind of had a career writing for television before going to novels, or which one came first?
The television came first. I went to, based in the US. I went to a school where we had the television studio, and we had like the television news announcements. And I just fell in love with everything video. And so I did the news station when I was in high school, and then I went to college. I did 1 semester of film school where I was like, oh no, I need something immediate. I need to hold it in my hands quickly. And I switched to television, and I was there ever since. And I love story any way that it comes. I grew up in a funk band.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
So my dad's a bass guitarist, and if he had local gigs, he'd take us on the road with him, and I learned how to like wrap the cables. But even more importantly than that, I would be there at band practice, and one of the very first things I remember about lessons of my dad teaching me was about how music is layered together, how you have the bass that has its part, and how you have the drums that have its part, and the keyboard has its part, and then the vocalist, and each part is telling a story. So from a very young age, I was always taught to look at how stories were layered with different parts, and how different people came in to add the stories, and that made sense. So when I learned to edit video, it made sense to me that I was editing video and I was editing sound, and I could add graphics. And then when I learned I had to translate that into books, I learned again. So editing is great. Editing a book is fun for me. Revising a book is fun, because I understand what you're doing in the first draft, where you're trying to figure out the plot, and then the next you're adding more character motivation, and in the next revision, because when I write my first drafts, my characters aren't wearing anything, the rooms are bare, I can't think of it. It doesn't make sense to my head to put that stuff in the first draft. I have to go back, and it's like a new note to the song where I'm layering in something new on top of what I just put in there.
Yeah, it's like a sketch, and then you're adding the colors, right?
Exactly.
Nice. That's really interesting. So do you see kind of stories in everything, like in every day in what you do?
One of the first things that I was taught when I went to what was film school, and then when I switched departments and was just in television, is that they said, we know we've done our job when you never watch a movie or a television show the same. You should always be looking for structure. It should come naturally to you. No one should want to sit next to you in the movie theater when you're watching a show, because you'd be like, oh, look, do you see that they just planted that little motivation there, and watch, it's going to pay out really soon. So no one's interested in sitting next to you next to me, because my brain's always working like that. When I see something play out in like real life, I'm like, no, you totally did that grand gesture wrong. You need to go back. You need to do it again. And no one knows what I'm talking about.
It's like you've seen behind the wizard's curtain.
Exactly. And I can't unsee it.
Nice. That must be a good skill to have with your writing of novels. So like, how did you get into kind of moving away from books? Like, had you always been a reader as well? Like, is that what influenced you getting into writing romance?
I inhaled books as a kid, inhaled them. And I had a godmother, my fairy godmother, who was a real person, who lived up the street from me. And I remember in her cupboard where you're supposed to keep your staples and your pastas and your canned goods. Nope. Guess what was in her cupboard? Books.
Oh, wow.
From top to bottom, she had books in there. And that was my first library. I would just go in there and take some books. And she didn't care whether I brought them back or not, because she's constantly replacing them. And they were all romance novels. So I would just go in and I would get books and I would take them. I was 12 reading Harlequins. And nobody cared. Nobody thought anything of it. But I would take these books, I'd read them, and I'd just consume them. And I would rate them. I rated them on like a scale of 1 to 5. So even then I was breaking apart the different pieces of the stories and trying to understand how the pieces went back together.
So were you able to kind of identify tropes, I guess, without even realizing that they were tropes?
I didn't know that they were tropes. I knew that I really enjoyed anytime there was what I came to know as forced proximity, where like if it was a marriage of convenience and they couldn't escape, they had to figure out how to work it out, or if they're stuck in a snowstorm or anything like that. I love that problem solving where you're in a problem, you're in an escape room, figure it out in order to get out. But then, of course, at the end, they wanted to stay together.
Yeah,
got out.
I like that. I know we talk to kind of Kobo's full of avid readers, and whenever we talk to our romance fans, that they're just kind of like, yeah, you want to know what you're getting from the story. Absolutely. Like, I want to know that it's this cozy, feel good thing.
Yeah, because it's a betrayal. If it's not, were you aware at all of this I don't know if it's Sanditon or Sandition uproar that happened earlier this year? It was Jane Austen's last unfinished novel. And someone who shall not be named decided to make it into a miniseries. And you know Jane Austen, she's a romance writer.
Yeah.
I'm going to spoil this for everybody because we need to know. When you get to it's beautifully filmed, gorgeously acted, and then you get to the end of the television series, and the hero and the heroine do not end up together because she never finished the book. So this is how this man interpreted it. Firestorm. Like, you can't mention that book, that television show, without people's heads exploding. So had that it's a really famous writer director, it was like, don't you know who the audience of these books are? If you didn't give us if we sat down for all these episodes and you did not give us what we wanted, people went off. So if I know that I like kissing books, and I know that each kissing book is supposed to end a certain way, and you don't deliver that to me, and I've gone through it, like I will never trust that person again. Yeah. Ever. So you make a promise to me. That's what a trope is. A trope makes a promise, and if you don't deliver on that promise, even if you didn't deliver once, I will never trust you again, not for the next 20 books or television shows.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I think sometimes people can see tropes as like almost in a negative way, and it's like, no, you're just guaranteeing a story. Like,
yeah, it's books. You come to books because a lot of times in life there's something missing, there's some trauma, there's something you're trying to escape. So you've got this thing that you're counting on, and if you let me down,
yeah. Just like dead to you forever.
Dead.
Nice. So let's go back to kind of your writing. And I'm just curious, like, is there anything that you took from writing for TV that really led into your novel writing, or vice versa, I guess? I mean, I don't know if you've gone back to writing for TV. No. That's another question, actually. Have you thought about your books as shows or miniseries?
I was writing scripts when I wrote my first book. When I wrote my first book, my first real book, because when I was a teenager, of course I tried my hand, and I was like copying the love scenes from Harlequin because I didn't know anything. I was 12. I didn't know anything about anything. There was just waves crashing, and that's all I knew about love scenes. Waves are crashing.
Fireworks.
Fireworks. I was very confused. But so no, I knew I wanted to be in media when I went to college, and I got out of college, and I was in media for a very long time. And I was my head is just immersed in that world. And that's just how I think. I was very well trained. So that's still how I think. I hear a lot of people talking about they write by word count or they write by page numbers. My brain doesn't think that way. I write in scenes because that's how it's taught. I write in scenes. I write in acts. I still think about because I was in television, I still think about where to put the commercial break. But when you're doing a commercial break, it's not like a breather. You have to make sure you hook them. You leave a question or you leave something dangling on the end, and then you have to hook them back in. So all of my chapters are I'm thinking commercial breaks. I'm thinking leave them at the edge of their seat, and then when they turn, leave them at the edge of the seat so they don't move. And then when they turn the page, hook them back in. So that's just built into my head of how I'm supposed to approach things. My pacing is very television-like because, again, we have an arc that we follow. And in television, you're really following beats. You're not really following acts, because there's maybe, depending upon how long the television show, there might be 4 or 6 or even more beats or times where you're going to take that commercial break where something has some part of the story has to happen. So all of this is in my head. So like when people are talking to me about, I got 3,000 words today, I'm like, okay, well, what's the story? Like, what does that mean?
You're like, I got 4 episodes.
Exactly. I can talk to you like that. And so, and I write pretty fast, but again, you have to remember where I'm coming from with why I write the way that I do, because in television, I would remember most seasons are like 13 episodes. You get a season, like literally over a season, like you have the fall season of television, you have the winter, you have the summer times. So I'm used to writing like 13 episodes for a season of television. And then, next year writing 13 more. And because that's how it's trained in my head. And because a script is either 30 to 60 pages, depending upon how long your show is. This is all stuff that this is just the way that I am baked. So I see nothing of writing like a 30,000 word book in like a couple of weeks. That makes sense.
Oh my God. Amazing.
I even hate saying that to people, but again, you have to see where I come from. Like I've listened to people who wrote for the news and how they are used to being on deadline and they can turn it out. Well, if you come to this world if you come to the book writing world from a different place that honed your muscles differently, then you're going to approach it that way. So yes, I write fast. I think in episodes. I don't think in standalones. Standalones don't make sense to me because a standalone is like a film. You watch a film, and if it's just a film, it's not like a planned trilogy. You leave, and if you're a fan, you're going to think about it some more. But if you're in television, it's my job to get you to come back next week. Again and again and again, and I need to up the stakes for the next season if I get a next season, and keep you coming back again and again. So even if I say I'm writing a book, like if I get invited to an anthology, there's still going to be some type of open door where I can go back to these characters always.
Nice. And how has writing scripts helped with your dialogue? Like, is it easier because you're used to it just being like point, or is it actually more difficult because you have to add the descriptors around it?
So I have to write in drafts, because if you were to look at the first draft of any of my books, it looks like a script. Because I was only afforded dialogue and action. That's all you get in a script. You get dialogue and action. Any type of subtext, I had to make it come out through dialogue and action. So when I wrote my first novel, and it was like a script, and I got feedback, and people were like, well, what are they thinking? Well, I was like, well, I'm showing you. And they're like, no, in their head, what are they thinking? I was like, you're right. I can write inner monologue. What? My head exploded. My head exploded a lot. So my head exploded. And I was like, I can write inner monologue. And that was a revelation to me. But still, the way that my brain is trained, I'm still writing that first draft like a script. So the dialogue, because I'm used to hearing dialogue, it comes out pretty snappy, pretty quick. I know what dialogue is doing a job. It needs to move the plot along. It needs to show character. So I'm just used to that. And then it's like freedom when I go back through and I'm like adding the motivation, and I don't have to put in the subtext so much. They can say what they need.
You're like, you don't have to like really rely on the viewer kind of assuming they're getting what you're saying. You can just like straight up say it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, great. So we'll ask if anyone has any questions throughout, feel free to leave them in the comments. Virginie says hello from France.
Hi.
She doesn't understand everything as she's French, but she really likes your enthusiasm. So that's great. And then Richard Murray says, some readers or viewers stay in the genre for what they want, but not all readers or viewers. But yeah, so I think back to the trope thing. But that is kind of good leading into my next question. So I actually wrote down a quote from Soul Publishing Live of yours that I thought was really terrific. And it was just like, understand what your genre is and why you're writing it. And I think that sometimes people forget that like, what's the reason that you're going into this specific genre? And as somebody that you write in multiple romance genres, so what advice would you give to authors that want to kind of dip their toe into more than one specific genre?
You know, the first thing that came to my mind is don't.
Oh, really?
It's really hard.
Do you regret having like the three different genres?
No, it was the right thing to do. And here's why it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do because they're different readers. There are not so many readers like me who will read a historical one night and then we'll read a steamy menage the next night, and then we'll read a contemporary romance with werewolves in it. Then I love kissing books. And if it's a kissing book where there's some type of forced proximity, I don't care where it's set. It could be on an alien spaceship. And if he's kidnapped her and he has to figure out how to make her love him because she's his fated mate, I'm there for it. If it's a duke and he's kidnapped her and taken her to his Highland court because he has to have a child by this particular woman in this bloodline, I'm there for it. But not everybody is there for that. So because it took me a while. I did not get this at first. I thought everybody was like me. So in the self-publishing live, I told people how my first book was a menage. It was a bisexual menage where two men were in love with each other, and then they fell in love. They both fell in love with a woman, and that made sense to me because it was love and it's kissing and who cares. And then my follow-up to that was about a single mother who, it was a Cinderella retelling, and it was a single mother who had the hots for the guy running for Congress. And my two audiences were like, what? They didn't cross over, and I didn't get it because I was like, I was inspired. I'd read a beautiful bisexual menage romance, and I was inspired, and I wrote my own. And then I was inspired because I was out at a farmer's market one day, and this really hot guy was canvassing, and my kid came up and was like, don't talk to my mommy. So I was inspired to write that story the way that I wanted it to come. And just because both of them came from my head and both of them were kissing books about love didn't mean that people wanted to read both of those romance novels. So that's why I separated myself into someone who writes steamy menage, someone who writes paranormal, contemporary fantasy type romance, and then later someone who writes sweet, because those audiences, I may have maybe 5 readers, maybe if I'm lucky, who will read all my stuff and who come and tell me, anything you write, let me know because I love it. But that is not the vast majority of my audience. So because I understand that now, I didn't before, because I understand that now and I understand the nuances of those audiences, yeah, I separate myself. If you are writing paranormal romance and urban fantasy romance, don't separate yourself because you might not have complete crossover, but you can have some crossover there. If you write contemporary romance and then you want to do a little bit of sweet romance, maybe think about it, because if there's sex on the page and sweet and clean readers don't want to see that, they're not going to read those books. But your contemporary romance readers might probably read the sweet stuff. So it really depends on the audience. You have to know the audience. And then, yeah, there's a separate thing of the actual plot expectations. You have to understand that too. And really the best way to understand that is to read heavily in what it is that you are writing.
I think that makes perfect sense. I think a lot of people maybe underestimate and think that it's easy. I'm just going to go into this new genre. And you're like, no, it's not. Like, there's a reason why people are kind of specialized in the genres that really work for them.
Yeah. But here's the thing too. So hopefully none of my sweet readers are listening, but I write sweet contemporary Western romance featuring wounded warriors who go to a rehab ranch, and where the horses help to rehab their bodies.
Oh yeah,
really good for that. I started writing these books in 2018. They exploded. Guess how many times I've been to a ranch?
Oh really?
Never. I have cousins in the military, but we don't really talk. But that's not really what I know that's not what my readers are here for. I know enough to sound smart, and I have enough friends to ask questions of to sound smart, but that's not what they're here for. I know that pretty much all of my readers are here for that alpha male experience where women have the fantasy of a guy, even strong women who are independent and they can take care of everything. Our fantasy is for us not to have to do that and to have this strong man come in and deal with it for us. That's the fantasy, but there's different levels of that fantasy. So there's alpha, we call them alpha holes, who are kind of jerky about it. Think Mr. Darcy to the extreme, where he's just nose up in the air, I know best, and you're just down, you're below me, and then eventually he falls. So that's one type of alpha male, and sweet readers don't really like that type of alpha male. They like the kind of working man who works really hard, and he may have been knocked down, but he gets back up and his back is straight, and he's not gonna stay down for long, and he's gonna make sure that woman has everything that she needs. There's that kind of guy. And then there's also the Christian Grey from 50 Shades of Grey kind of guy who will, regardless of what you want, will fulfill your every need, including if he has to buy the business and kick your boss out because that's what's going to make you happy. There's that kind of guy who, yeah, again, my sweet readers are not going to like, and some women are like, oh, that's just too much. So there's different levels of this alpha kind of male. And because I read so heavily in all of my chosen genres, which are all kissing books, I can see where those niches are and where to draw the line.
Yeah, I really like the idea of reimagining people like that. Imagine like 50 Shades was a sweet version. You'd be like, Christian Grey would be totally different. You're right. Like, that's super interesting. And I think as well with writing, like you're saying, you haven't been on a ranch. Like part of that job is just like your job as a good enough writer that you're going to research that, like that your story is going to be so compelling that the readers aren't really going to care. I feel like, you know, the only things that are, I mean, I think it's historical, right? That you'd have to be a bit more kind of research heavy.
That's no, I can't.
You're like, I want to be able to have the characters have a cell phone and not have to worry about when that was invented. Like, yeah. Do you time your books at all, actually, or are they always just kind of like to be read as if it's present day?
My sweet stuff is always present. My paranormal, it just depends on how what I like to do with my paranormal and my urban fantasy is I love mythology and fairy tales and folklore. Like that's one of my favorite things. I used to teach class when I taught screenwriting. I taught classes on adaptation, and those are my favorite things to adapt and to teach people how to adapt. So a lot of my paranormal romance and urban fantasy is some type of mythology or fairy tale adaptation set in the modern day. And then my steamy stuff is just out there. There's aliens, there's bikers, there's race cars, there's everything. I'm just like, what strikes my fancy today?
That must be really fun to write.
Yes.
Nice. So we talked about like the different genres that you write in, and you do have 3 pen names. Yes. Do you think it's really important for authors to separate their pen name, or does it depend on how different the genres are?
It depends on the audience. It depends on the audience. I could totally get away with putting my steamy stuff and my paranormal paranormal and urban fantasy stuff together. And I did for a while. But because I realized that those and the reason I know this again is because readers started to tell me, or when I was looking at my open rates, I would see that some books got lots of open rates and some books didn't when I would send an email. And when I started to separate things out, I could see those open rates rise. So I think it's a really good thing to be self-centered in this business. I feel like a lot of people look at what others are doing and they try to get the answers there. I really think you got to be self-centered. I really think you have to study yourself, study why you're doing this stuff, study the people who are following you, and try to figure out what it is that they really are digging about what you're putting out there. And that I really feel like the people who have really become successful have at some point stopped focusing so much on what others are doing and really honed in on what they're doing and why they're doing it and why it's working or why it's not working the way that they want it to.
I love that, because independent publishers are really forthcoming with their data, but then you always sometimes get struck in a comparison loop, I think. And, you know, whether or not you're a new author that's trying things, or, you know, you've been here for a while and you're not too sure why marketing is changing so quickly. So yeah, being confident in your own kind of ability and stories, that's great.
And some of the things that work really well for my Ines PNR and Urban Fantasy pen name do not work at all for my Sinead pen name. For example, newsletter swaps work like gold for Sinead, the sweet stuff. And I figured out when they don't for Ines, and I figured out why.
So weird.
I think that what I think through my scientific investigation is that urban fantasy and paranormal romance is so saturated, and there's so it's pretty big traditional, and the texts are set, like the seminal texts are set. Whereas sweet romance, like something can look sweet, but you never know exactly what's between those covers, literally and figuratively. Are the people going to get between the covers? And they're not interested in that, right? So they're kind of gun shy. They're like peeking through the pages, like, oh, what are you about to do? How are you going to take it past the kiss? Don't take it past the kiss, right? So I think that the newsletter swaps work for sweet, because if I, as Sinead, am recommending another sweet author, they're going to trust me more than they're going to trust that cover that kind of looks sweet, but they're not sure, because it could be contemporary and there could be some serious heavy petting in there that they're not interested in seeing. And I think that's why that works. So I can run newsletter swaps all day for Ines and not have anything happen. But if I run some sweet newsletter swaps for Sinead, I'm going to get a lot of new readers.
Wow. So do you have two newsletters or three that you kind of?
I have two. I had three. So Sinead has a really highly responsive newsletter. Ines has an old newsletter because she's where I started. And then the steamy stuff, I saw that a lot of people were just there for free stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Like a different type of reader, I guess.
Different type of reader, yeah. And erotic romance is hard because it's hard to promote it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be, you can't put the same kind of like Facebook ads and marketing behind erotic romance, because there's so many more restrictions if your cover is anyway raunchy, right? Like,
yep. Yeah. They will happily stop you. Now, BookPub and BookPub cost per click ads, they were like, put whatever you want on there. I have seen some really racy things on BookPub.
Nice. Well, that's why it's just great that there's another platform. Like, that's why, like, you know, having your books wide and in several places is important for promotion, so you're not restricted.
Yes. Yes.
So when you are getting authors to swap your newsletter with, like, how do you go about that?
So with the sweet stuff, it's air quotes simple. You just go to Facebook and you look up sweet romance authors, sweet newsletter swaps, stuff such and such. You can look on BookFunnel. You can look on, oh gosh, I can't remember the other guy's name who does. It's right at the top of my head. He's a really, really nice guy, and I can't remember the name of his company. It's a newer company. I see his face. I can't remember the name of the company, but you can go to these places and then you can find it. If you're doing something on BookFunnel, you got to be careful, because sometimes there's this thing that authors are doing called sweet and steamy. And it's such an oxymoron to me. And I don't understand why people are using that term sweet, where it can be confused. And if you get readers who don't want the steamy part of it, you're going to have some problems. I don't understand why that's happening. It doesn't make sense to me. But you have to watch it, because sometimes people are genuinely not paying attention, and they see sweet and they're thinking authors, and they're thinking something different. So make sure that what you've signed up for is actually the right amount of kisses that you signed up for. Otherwise, your readers will tell you, sweet readers will tell you, because they are the pearl clutching kind sometime, and they will tell you.
Yeah.
But they did not appreciate that.
Self-publishing with Dale says hello. So hi. Is it Story Origin? Is that what you were thinking of?
Thank you. Yes, it's Story Origin. They're awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Dale, for skipping in there. You were exactly right. So you wrote a really good blog for us at Kobo Writing Life, where you kind of shared your writing and organizational secrets, and you seem to really have it down to a T. So how do you do that with balancing like your regular life as like you're a mom and, you know, your regular work life? I noticed your like giant board behind you. Is that an integral part of making sure you're releasing this number of books with 3 pen names?
We're at the end of the quarter, so you can't be too impressed by, you can't really see all the way down, all the sticky notes that are further down here.
I love that. I love it so much.
It's a Kanban board. So let me take that question in a different part. So I plan quarterly, because when I was planning for the whole year, I would get really stressed out at everything that I wanted to do for the year. And of course, things got moved, didn't work out. So I was constantly like rejiggering my calendar to account for that. And that was just really stressful. And I changed my mind a lot, because you have to be flexible in this business. I had scrapped whole series because I saw the market changing. And I really put forth new series because I saw the market changing. Yes. Oh. So so I now plan quarterly, and that works really well for me. So I know what I'm going to be doing for the next 3 months over 3 pen names. So I set goals for each pen name. I set goals for different parts of my life. And I just really I say that I try to just focus on that, but you can't see either. But at the very top of the board, there's a place called the parking lot. Actually, you can see it. At the top of the board, there's a place called the parking lot. And all those stickies are things that I'm thinking about doing. They're not down in the regular part of the board.
I love that. It's like being able to view your brain. Right. I love it.
So I plan that way. I'll give a shout out if you're really interested in learning how to Kanban, how to quarterly plan. A really great place to learn how to do that is this blog called Heart Breathings. It's hosted by Sarah Cannon. You may have had her on, I'm not sure, but she's another author, and she's broken this down to a T. She has a whole system, and she is the one that really helped me to like screw my head on straight about how to plan really effectively. So I plan that way. But yes, I have 3 pen names, and the way that it works is whoever is making the money is the sugar mama. So Shanae is making the most money, so she's a sugar mama. So I am also an early bird.
How early is early now?
I get up around 6 o'clock in the morning and start writing.
Really? Just straight in writing?
I putz around a bit, and as it's getting colder, stuff's creaking, and I'm it's a little slower to get out of bed. But yeah, in the summer, my eyes would open at 5:30. I would go make tea. I would do a little bit of journaling. I would check around on ads and do all that stuff, and then button chair at 6 o'clock, and I'm writing. I do that because I'm also a mom. I'm a mom of a 19-year-old, and my youngest is turning 18 next month, so I'm almost done. Yes.
You're going to get so much more books coming out once they hit that mark, right?
But I had to do that because, they would get up, and then that they ask me for stuff, and they expect me to do it. And like,
how dare they?
What? So that was the time that I could get up and be uninterrupted. So I would get up, I would get those words and be uninterrupted before, I had to turn into mommy and do stuff for them. And so that habit just stuck. I'm from my dad's an early bird too, but that was really the way that I got the most of my writing done. And then there was no stress for the rest of the day because everything else was just bonus.
I'm going to try and take that advice because I really want to try and do nano this year. And I think it's going to be just me getting up at 6 in the morning because I won't do it in the evening.
See, but the other thing that works too is accountability partners in sprinting. So I have my college roommate is also an author, and on and off over the years, we sprint together, and she was under a really tough book deadline the last couple of months. So we've been sprinting together every day at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I have my 2 hours, and then she'd come on, and I get a second win, we'd sprint together. So having someone with you, and there's a lot of sprint groups out there online. Yeah. And we keep the camera on because I can hear her typing and she can hear me typing. And then we sprint in like 20-minute, we do 20-minute sprints, and then we take a break and we talk, and she could talk through any plot problems that she's having. We check in to make sure. So you said you were going to get through half of that chapter in this 20 minutes. Did you do it? How far did you get? What's going on with your characters? And that makes it more communal, social. So it because writing is so solitary,
right?
That really helps me getting up early and kind of being by myself for a minute, and then searching out people to kind of write and hang with.
That's great. So is there, I guess it's just through different author groups that you can find sprinting people, like, Oh, that's good advice. I'm going to rely heavily on my colleagues that are also doing nano to try and motivate me.
You can come into Facebook and make like a little room, and then anybody can just come on and start typing away.
All right, I'm taking the Joni, write all this down. Watching. Oh, nice. So one of the things, you mentioned there that you had kind of scrapped a series because of market trends, and like you're very driven by like data and analytics. So if you had like a magic analytical 8-ball, so we're going to shake it up and see like what would be your prediction for like the next romance genre? Like what's the trope that we're going to see?
Okay, so I read across 3 pen names. First, let me tell you how I would make sure about any predictions. How I would make sure about any predictions is I would go and watch the markets. I have on my phone, I've got the Kobo app on my phone, I've got the Amazon app, the promo of the Nook app, the Apple app, I've got them all on my phone. And when I'm just kind of waiting in a line or just putzing around, I pull them open and I just look and see what's going on at the top of my charts, at the top of the charts in romance. And the reason that I knew that Sweet was going to be a winner 2 years ago, because I kept seeing Western romances on the tops of all the charts in across the boards on the retails. I just kept seeing it over and over again. And I went wide because I knew that if I'm seeing this on Kobo and I'm seeing this on Barnes & Noble and I'm seeing this on Apple, there's a lot of readers who are looking for this type of book. And I only with Shanae, with Shanae and Sweet, Westerns are still doing really well, and I'm seeing a lot of women's fiction with romance doing well, which is not something that I'm interested in. There's not enough kissing in women's fiction.
But that's add it. Really, create a new genre. Women's kissing fiction.
Women's fiction with lots of kissing. And so then the others you look for. So like with paranormal romance and urban fantasy, like I'll see like 1 or 2 authors in urban fantasy constantly, which is a little bit bumming. And they're usually like the big trad authors. Right. And then in like Amazon, I'll see like tons of urban fantasy because they seem to have a stronghold there. But I'm wide, and I'm still looking for like new and up and coming things there. So really the best thing to do is to constantly like if you have stocks, you're going to look at them. If you are trying to get out of debt or save money, you're going to be, looking at your bank account on a regular basis. So that's really what I recommend, is that you look at the charts and look at what's happening.
I think that's great because a lot of authors wouldn't even consider it. And like, I really don't like this phrase, but you eat your own dog food. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you want to be able to like know what your readers on Kobo are looking for versus your Barnes & Noble, because when you're a wide author, your comparative genres aren't necessarily always the same. It's not always the same authors that are successful on one platform. Yep. So no, I think that's really wonderful. Yeah. I had a question that was exactly that, and you covered it all. Mm-hmm. So how often do you spend going over that sort of stuff on the apps? Is this something that you do quarterly as well, or do you do it more frequently?
So, I missed part of your question. So let me bring it back around to that. So sure. It's the habit. Like, I have QuickBooks on my phone. That's how I do my accounting. So I know that at least every other day, I'm going to tap on the QuickBooks app and I'm going to categorize what I've spent. So it's the same thing. If I'm at the stove and I'm making lunch, I'll tap on the Kobo app and I'll just take a look and see what's happening. And it's just quick. It's less than 5 minutes. It might only take me 2 minutes just to look and see what's going on. So it's just a habit. At least doing it once a week, I would recommend. And you don't have to do it on your phone. It's just convenient because you always have your phone in your hand. You can just go to the sites too and take a look. But you had asked me how the market had kind of changed my mind about something. So with sweet romance, for example, I can give you a sweet example, and I can give you a paranormal romance example. Sure. With sweet romance, I did the Western romance, and I used K-Lytics. I was looking at Kobo and Barnes & Noble, and I saw this was happening, and I used K-Lytics to really try to dig deep, because K-Lytics put out a clean romance report. And I was really digging deep on all the data. And that's when I saw Western, I saw marriage of convenience, and I saw military. And I just put all three of them together, and it went really well. And so I did that. It went really well. And then Harry and Meghan got married. And I was like, everybody is going to want to read royal romance. Did I see any royal romances climbing the charts on the retailers? Not really, but still, Harry and Meghan got married. Everybody's clearly obsessed with this like I am. So I wrote royal romance. It didn't do much of anything because that's not what people were reading.
Even Harry and Meghan didn't want that.
Oh, so that didn't work out. And with a paranormal romance that I just put out, I did the same thing. Stranger Things, it's blew up, and I'm a child of the 80s, so I was like, I have all this firsthand 80s knowledge because I was a kid during that time. So I'm gonna write a paranormal romance with dragons, because dragons is always doing well. I'll write a paranormal romance with dragons, and I'll put all these 80s references in there because that's the last time the dragons visited Earth and humans. And I have this dragon romance with all kinds of hilarious 80s references, and a lot of people are like, in the reviews are like, I don't get it. What? I don't get it. Because again, I'm thinking something from pop culture, from current culture that's happening, and tie it in all together.
Yeah.
Look at the charts. I had fun writing that series. I had fun writing the royal romances. I don't regret it, but I had to stop and step back.
Don't you think that everything is kind of cyclical as well? So maybe they could come back around, and would you consider like maybe rebranding them or giving them kind of like a relaunch? I
did those things. I did. And when I did rebrand them, they did sell better, but they didn't. A lot of my author friends think that I don't know if jaded is the right word, but my expectations are wrong because I'm expecting everything to take off the way that the ranch romance did, because the ranch romance took off based on data and looking at the charts and seeing what readers were actually asking for.
Yeah.
I'm expecting everything to do that well. And if it doesn't do that well, then I think it's a failure. But readers weren't asking for the royal romances. Readers weren't asking for the 80s dragons. They weren't asking for that. So if it doesn't do as well as the ranch romances, in my head, it's a failure. Those books, they did okay.
Yeah.
But I told myself to stop writing them and stop trying to force them, because readers were like, yeah, that's cute. We want more Purple Heart Ranch. Or yeah, that's cute. Where is the next paranormal romance that doesn't feature dragons and 80s references? I had to listen to what it is that my customers were asking me to give them to read, instead of just focusing on, this is gonna be so much fun. I'm gonna write this and everybody's gonna love it. And you can do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, but that wasn't my goal.
Yeah.
The goal was to make more money to feed those kids who still want to eat all the food in the house. So I had to make sure those lined up.
Absolutely. Rich has a good question here. Is there any romance genres that you think are on the way out?
I would never say that a romance genre is on the way out, because
it's so secular.
It's cyclical, so it might, like, here, Midnight Sun just came back out, and vampires are on the rise again.
Exactly.
Maybe because of Midnight Sun, maybe because of something else, but things are constantly coming around and around with romance. I don't study the other genres so heavily, so I don't know if that happens there. But romance goes in waves. So I have books that are like 4 years old that had a resurgence because something else happened and everybody got on that train again. And I see authors doing it all the time. Yeah. Where I'm like, I read that series. That's just a new cover on that series, but I read that and I liked it. And then 5 years later, it shoots back up to the top of the charts, because romance readers, they will come back. Like, I'm reading books from 10 years ago just because they're comfort reads right now because of we're in a global pandemic. But we do that. We keep coming back around.
Yeah. No, I think that's a wonderful answer and totally fair point. So you always have lots of really great marketing advice for authors. And to be honest, I think we could talk for another hour just about marketing alone. But I wanted to kind of maybe ask a really difficult question, but is there one thing that all authors should be doing?
Newsletter.
Ah, you knew it off the top of your head.
Newsletter.
Yeah, that's
Because
the really important
that is a really
push.
important one. And I understand, you might not seem like it, but I'm an introvert, which means that after this
Doesn't seem like
conversation,
it at all.
I'm probably going to go lay down to recharge my energy. Like I can talk to just about anybody, but afterwards I'm like a robot and I like must decompress. So I say that to say that you might like be like, well, what do I say to people in newsletter? My life isn't very interesting. And I'm the first person to say that my life isn't very interesting. But readers, they didn't get to talk to their authors before. They didn't get to hear from them before. They just saw the characters, and authors were this mysterious thing. But readers, they do enjoy that if you're giving them good content, yeah, about your books, but also a little bit about you. And I've got 2 kids. Like, yes, they're just pretty much grown, but still, I need to protect their privacy because they didn't ask for this. They didn't sign up for it. So anytime there's something funny that I can tell about my family, or anytime there's something interesting that happened in my research for a book, then I put that stuff in there. But the newsletter is the way that I can touch my readers. I can reach out to them. I can touch them. Every time I send a newsletter, I sell a book because I'm constantly looking for new people to get on my newsletter. So if you're doing Amazon and you have the Amazon button, they can follow you, but guess who has their email address? Amazon, not you. Kobo promotions are amazing, and I know people come to the Kobo page and I'm getting new readers when I'm with a promotion, but Kobo has their email address, not me. Or if you guys are using Pixels, Kobo is finding them again, not me. The only way the only way that I can keep those people, that I can have them and keep them, is if they give me their email address. So I strongly recommend that you start a newsletter, and I email every week.
Yeah, I was going to ask your frequency. You think weekly?
I email every week. And the reason that I email every week is because if you don't want to hear from me, I want you to unsubscribe.
Yeah, you want to make sure your list is full of people that genuinely want this content.
Yeah. And there was that one of the first things that I heard when I got into this business was the idea of the 1,000 true fans. So I remember the first year of me having a newsletter, I was huffing and puffing to get to that 1,000 because I knew that, like, think about it, guys. If you have a book that you're selling for $2.99 and you have 1,000 people buy your book, and let's say you're a prolific writer and you can write a book a month, and your bills are like $1,500 a month. If you have 1,000 true fans and you put out a $2.99 book every month and you make $2,000 from that, you're set. You are set. So I knew that I needed to get that amount of people interested in my books, and to keep putting out content, and to keep showing, not only putting out new content. I make my money on my backlist. I had a book release today, and sometimes I do that. I'll have a book release. I'm like, oh crap, I have a book release today.
Don't put it on your board behind you.
Right? But because that's not where my money comes from. My money comes from selling that backlist, and that's what I do with that newsletter. There's always someone new signing up to my newsletter, and they maybe read one of my books, but I got a lot of books in that backlist, and I'm always trying to figure out. Maybe I have a character say, hey, have you met me? This is a little bit about me. Or I come on and I say, hey, my inspiration for this was this particular thing. I'm constantly selling my backlist. I might talk to my readers about a new release once a month, but then after that, selling that backlist, because that's where the tide rises, is in the backlist.
I think that independent authors are much better at focusing on backlist than, I think it's an area that traditionally people don't put as much attention to.
No. They I think it's because of the shelf space.
Yeah. They don't think digitally, like, yeah.
I have infinite shelf space. If you get my newsletters, you'll see just about all of my books, or at least the first in the series of all the books down there, because that's my shelf space. Because somebody's going to scroll down, they're like, oh, she wrote this too? Let me click on that. And then they click on that, and they enter a new world. And I write in series. So it's not just going to be one book. It's going to be a whole bunch of books. And I also, from television, I write those hooks. So I don't just hook you from chapter to chapter. I hook you at the end of the book to get you, because I know the skills to get you to tune in for the next episode next week. So I do that with my book. Tune in for the next part in the series. So all those skills wrapped together, like newsletters are the perfect way for somebody like me who thinks episodically to continue to sell you something.
That's perfect. I really like that. Stephanie McGrath has a question. So what romance series would you love to see as a TV show? And then which series have you written that you'd want to be a TV show? So 2 questions there.
I would love if my Purple Heart Ranch series got turned into a television show. Yeah. Again, wounded warriors, finding love and healing on a ranch. It's Hallmark all over it. Which television show, which book would I love to see turned into a television show? I get scared because people don't, they don't always do a great job. So maybe I'll go with something kids. My favorite book growing up was this book called Betsy's Little Star. And I think it's kind of hard to mess up a kid's book. And it's just about, you know, an older sister and a little sister, kind of in the vein of like little Anne of Green Gables, but with siblings. Cute little book. So yeah, do something kids. Like as an adult, you might mess it up.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. Do you see it as like an animation or kind of like a live action?
Oh, I was thinking live action, but I didn't think animation. That's a really good idea.
Then you could do anything.
You could do anything, yeah.
And then which of your series would you like to be a TV show?
Well, so this with Shanae would be Purple Heart Ranch. But you know what I would love to see turned into a movie? I have a series called The Near River Adventures, which is kind of Lara Croft, but she's an ancient immortal and she's lived for so long that she starts forgetting things. And that first book is free if anybody's interested, but she starts forgetting things. And so sometimes she's digging something up and she's like, I think this has to do with me. So she's it's really funny because she comes off a little self-centered, but she's kind of like, no. I may have had something to do with this in the inner monologue to the readers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nice. Is that something that you would like to do with your books eventually, or is it just like you're focused really on just writing the novels?
I'm really focused on, because I was in that world.
Yeah.
I know what it takes to get something produced, and sometimes I'm writing and I was a producer, and so sometimes I'm like breaking down the budget in my head. I'm like, stop it.
No. Well, that's why I think that you'd have kind of you'd be a bit ahead because you have this experience.
Yeah, but I get so much with like television and film, like it takes so long to do just one.
Right. It's not like you're being able to release books like every couple months or.
I'm in heaven with how often I get to tell a story. I'm in heaven. Yeah.
Nice. So what are you working on right now?
Oh goodness. What am I working on right now? I've got
I love that they're color coded. It's so good.
So I'm finishing up a sweet series. The last book in the spinoff of my Purple Heart Ranch series. I'm finishing that up. I wanted to, because I write paranormal romance. So I was like, and my favorite thing about the paranormal romance is when it's fated mates and the guy's like, "You're mine," and he growls. I love that. And I was like, I wonder if I could translate this into sweet romance. So, but with that note, guys, I know I was talking about writing to market a lot, but I don't write books that I'm not interested in. I will find a way. When I saw that Western was selling, I found a way to intermix what I'm passionate about reading into what I could be passionate about writing. So remember I said I love forced proximity. So these are all marriage of convenience.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
have you ever tried to write something that you weren't interested in just because you're like, this is a genre that's selling right now?
I won't do it. Because I think that's what I don't believe in like burnout in the muse.
Yeah.
But I know that if I try to force myself to do something that I'm not interested in, I'm gonna lie down on the bed and not want to get up.
Yeah. And I think that the readers won't respond as well, right? I think you can feel that on the page.
You can feel it, you can read it. It's gonna be in your words. Absolutely.
So then some final questions that we have here. And I'm just curious about what advice you'd give to an author starting out, kind of versus what advice then would you give an author that's been in this business for a while and maybe they're feeling a little burnt out?
So if you're starting out, okay, fine, look at what other people are doing, but then you got to turn around, look in the mirror, or if you meditate, look within yourself. And you have to be really clear about your goals. I was very clear about my goals was that I wanted to be able to support my family. So I went the route of writing to market, writing what I loved to market. because I see a lot of people that are like, I can't write fast. I can't write in that genre. You don't have to. If your goal isn't, depending upon what your goal is, you need to make sure that those are in alignment. So that's the number one thing that I would tell a new author. Make sure you understand what your goal is. And if your goal is just to put out a beautiful story, then put it out there and then sit back. It might blow up. It might take some time and be trickling in. So know what your goal is. For someone who has been at this for a while, what worked for me was building that backlist. I saw that even if my books weren't, in the beginning, I was making like maybe $100 a month. But every time I added a book, that income went up and up and up and up. So I firmly believe that it's about the backlist, and it's about writing what readers are interested in buying, like not royal romance, even though Harry and Meghan.
Not even royals anymore.
Right?
I mean, nobody would have predicted that. Like, if anyone wrote that book a couple years ago, they'd be like, that's
right,
too fantastical.
Right.
But no, that's really, really terrific advice. And so if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you on the World Wide Web?
If you're an author, the best thing, every once in a while, I'll turn the camera on StreamYard and I'll show you what I'm doing. I'll like show you how to do a Facebook ad, and you can find a lot of that on Facebook, on YouTube. Just look for my name, Ines Johnson, and you'll see that. I'm not selling any courses or anything. I'm just like, hey, look, we're doing a pandemic. I want to talk to somebody. Look, I made a Facebook ad. Look, I did this, and I just show you what I'm doing. If you like Western romance that's sweet, then you can look at Ines Johnson, Shanae, which is my middle name. If you like urban fantasy or paranormal romance, and then best place to look for me on Kobo, because my books are wide, and I always have at least one perma free up there. So yeah, look for me there.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us during lunch. This was super informative, and man, I feel like you just know the romance biz inside and out.
12 years old, man. This you want to raise a romance reader? Start her at 12.
So what's your what are you reading now? Like, what are you personally reading?
I'm going back through Courtney Milan's Brother Sinister series, because I love that series, and I just needed some comfort reads that I know how they end. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Nice, wonderful. I'll have to check those out as well. But all right, well, thanks very much, guys. And Ines, we'll drop the social links there. Rich just asked for them. I'll get Laura to drop them in there. And yeah, thanks again.
Thanks, guys.